Hey, what is shaking? Welcome to the Fun on Purpose podcast. I am Christopher Bruce, and as always, next to me, Nick Gianoulis, the Godfather of Fun. Man, we got a great one.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this one, Chris.
We're going to be talking about happiness and
beyond.
Happiness
and beyond.
What are you most excited about?
Well, so our guests are like superheroes to me, right?
Yeah.
I kind of known them for a while and admired their work so much. They're just really so well accredited, but just wonderful human beings.
All right, well, don't give too much away.
I know, I'm so excited.
We're going to get to that soon enough. You are watching the Fun on Purpose podcast. Thanks for joining us. It's going to be a good one.
Cheers.
Welcome once again to the Fun on Purpose podcast. As always, Nick Gianoulis right here next to me. I am Christopher Bruce. We are with the fun department, but today it's not just about fun. It's about happiness. Happiness and
beyond. Happiness.
So think about that. Let that sit with you for a second. I love that idea. Beyond happiness.
Right?
We're going to dig into that
I'm intrigued.
more today for sure. And to help us do that, we have some amazing guests on the show. Very excited to get into this conversation. I know everybody's going to walk away with some amazing, tangible takeaways, some thoughtful, provocative things to take and bring into their life. So Nick, why don't you start off by talking about our first guest, and we'll get to both of them.
Okay, sure.
But Jenn. Talk about
right.
Jenn for me.
Yeah,
She's amazing.
Yeah. So, like kind of one of my superheroes, I guess, Jenn Lim. So I've been following, thought leaders that I really admired around the world, and Jenn's kept popping up, right? So we had the opportunity to meet years ago, and I describe it as kind of instant karma, like hit it off right away. But super bright, super cool rock star. Just in terms of like official credentials.
Yeah. We've got a pretty cool list, actually.
Yeah, we got a list.
Do you want me to read the list?
You go
I'll
for
read
it.
the list.
Okay,
I'm going to go through this and try to keep up at home if you can.
There you go.
She is a global workplace expert, best-selling author, speaker, executive coach, CEO, and co-founder of Delivering Happiness. And on top of it all, Jenn has been featured in Inc., Forbes, Fortune, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Thrive Global, MSN, Fox Business, CNBC, Make It, and Success Magazine, along with other things. And she's the author of Beyond Happiness, which we'll get into a little bit more. It's, she went from delivering to beyond, which is what we're going to talk about, that transition. Right. And then along with her partner in crime, this individual has been working with her on this mission for a long time, Javier Muñoz. Let's talk about him for a second.
Yeah. So I believe it's been about 15 years that these two have been working together, co-founded Delivering Happiness together.
Yeah.
He sets up a lot of the methodology and practices and helps execute on all those strategies, works with companies around the world.
Yes.
He actually resides in Mallorca, which is a fun fact and where we'd all like to be
Still
right now.
waiting on my invite, by the way, but we'll work on that. Maybe
First stop on my honeymoon, pretty special, little aside
awesome.
there, but great place, fantastic human being, same thing, like, anybody that travels in their circle, they're just cool people. They're like rock stars. So,
and a former alchemist of happiness, which maybe we'll get into that, maybe we won't, but it's a fun thing to know.
We could circle back to that.
Listen, I'll go through some of his stuff. You talked about it. Founder and managing partner of Just Action, global partnership lead and workplace strategist. Like I said, former alchemist, all the things. And one of the coolest homes in the world, right? Lives in Mallorca, as we should all hope to do such things, and is a collaborative artist with his wife. We don't need to get into all of it. It's a beautiful day. Let's talk about happiness. Jenn, Javier, how are you? Welcome to the show. We're excited to get into it.
So good to be here. Thanks for having us. I'm Nick. I wouldn't be losing sleep. I'm waiting for my invite to Mallorca as well. So that's all me.
Okay. Well, at least we're not alone. I feel a little bit better in that. There is some joy in that, right? So we'll have to work on that. Javier, first off, let's get to the point. Where are our invites?
Well, by the way, the whole point to come to Mallorca is also to do a little bit of a tour to the rest of the islands, starting with probably Ibiza, which is probably extremely famous for all of you. Ibiza, you have done.
Yeah, Ibiza, everywhere you want to be, right?
And then then Menorca. Menorca, it's the other lesser known island, which is just magical with beautiful energy. So the combination of every one of those islands is just magic. And that
We're
definitely,
ready.
it's very
That
easy
is
to bring you here because we cannot never go wrong coming over here.
Well, it sounds like happiness, and maybe we'll talk about why that's so important here today. So welcome, really welcome to the show. We're excited to get into this. We did want to start off with some fast-paced questions, a little bit of rapid fire to kind of warm us up, get you guys ready to get into the deeper dive. Are you okay with that? We're going to throw some stuff at you.
Sure.
I'm down for that. It's morning here, so I can use some.
All right, let's see
Do
how
it.
this goes. Nick, are
Let's
you
do it.
ready?
Let's do it.
All right, so I'm going to go. I'll give you both a chance to answer. But first question is this. When was the last time you high-fived a stranger?
Not that long ago. I want to say last week.
Wow.
Last week.
Yeah, okay, last
Nice.
week. Javier, how about you?
No, it's been probably a while. It was when we were doing one of those free hug things in a public park with my wife.
All right, Javier, you're going to have to go and high-five somebody today.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get out there and high-five a stranger, all right?
I mean,
Change
I
that.
did better
What's
I
harder?
did better than a high five. I was doing actually hugging, which is even harder.
Oh,
that's
well,
even
that
better.
counts.
That-
I
yeah,
guess you know
yeah.
what? Tell you what, a hug
There
is
you
pretty
go.
solid. I'll
Yes.
give you that. Now, what's harder? Turning a frown upside down or finding lost socks?
Oh, the socks.
Socks for sure.
The socks.
Hands
Socks
down.
is tough. It's because
Amen.
well, because
Yeah,
listen, you
definitely.
can turn the frown upside down, but the
Right.
socks are gone.
Right.
Yeah, they're in the vortex. You're never gonna find them.
Exactly.
All right. What's happier? What is happier? A puppy getting a belly rub or a baby pig in the mud?
Tough one.
Definitely the belly rub. belly rub. Belly rub. I would think.
I mean, the baby would get more likes. I think, very likely.
Yeah, we're okay. So we're mixed on that. We're not sure. We're gonna have to
Right.
go out to maybe take that one to a broader audience.
Yeah.
All
How
right.
about pizza? Moving on to pizza.
Yeah, pizza is a good one.
Yeah.
Do you guys eat pizza for one? Are you pizza fans?
Just had it last night.
Most definitely.
Nice.
Perfect. What is your go-to topping?
Favorite topping.
Classic pepperoni. I know I don't even eat meat that much anymore, but I still have to have the pepperoni. It's I don't know, probably nostalgic. Pepperoni and ranch
Yeah.
dressing.
Oh, I don't know. Okay,
Ooh.
you lost me at the ranch, but I
Ooh,
like the
kinda
pepperoni.
Like it. I kind of like it.
All right, Javier, how about you?
Very definitely pineapple.
Oh.
Yes.
Pineapple.
Pineapple's always good, but it's really good if you do the pepperoni or the ham, pineapple, and like a jalapeno. That's a
Yeah.
great combination. That spicy Hawaiian vibe, that's awesome. Just throw it out there. Try it if you haven't. You're going to love it. And what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I have cereal with yogurt. Pretty simple.
Liquid breakfast so far. I got my coffee going.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
It's still early. In
Comes
camp.
after the
Yeah.
show.
Well, listen, good for you. You actually know what you had, right? A lot of us, we like,
Right.
wait, what did I have for
I can't
breakfast?
even remember.
I had a smoothie. I think that's what I did today. Nothing
Yeah.
too exciting. All right. Well, with that, let's keep moving. Great job. I'm glad that we could get into this. Nick, are you ready?
Yeah, they answered them all correctly, I believe. I think they got 100%.
Great
there.
score on those. Great score. So let's get right into Beyond Happiness at the end of the day. What is Beyond Happiness? What's that all about?
Getting straight to there. So the backstory, there's a little bit of backstory. I'll try to do the short version, but essentially, so Javi and I met way back when, and really started with a company called Delivering Happiness. That was 2010, and basically used a book by the same name and created a whole methodology and using positive psychology, scientific happiness, helped organizations and governments like the government of Dubai and hospital systems, you name it, organizations create an environment where you can actually create sustainable happiness, which is largely around having a higher purpose, being authentic to yourself, feeling growth, feeling community. So that was in the last 14 years. And then fast forward to around when COVID hit, is when I was supposed to write a book, and I didn't have a title for it yet. But basically, because the world got 2020'd and every single month we had a new headline, I didn't know what quite to write anymore because no one wanted to hear about happiness for a long time. So finished the book at the end of the year. Everyone had some sort of loss, trauma, pain. Let's just be real. I mean, not necessarily a human being, but something in their life that happened. So I kind of changed the arc of the book and realized, we've been doing happiness for so long, but I wanted to take it beyond and really not just talk about the highs, and chasing the rainbows and the unicorns. It really is about the lows as well, and kind of fulfilling it out in a more meaningful life, to know that yes, of course we want those high moments, but until we understand the lows, then we're not really showing up as our whole selves, as a holistic person. So that's why we took it beyond.
I love that. So, and then, I mean, where would you follow up with that, right? So, what does happiness at work? So let's think about, obviously, in our lives, and I love that you explained a little bit about what it means to go beyond, right? It's not just the highs, it's the lows as well. How does that relate to people at work, and what does happiness mean at work?
Yeah, Javi, I'd love to hear your perspective on this one too. But for me, I think one of the reasons why we were so passionate about this starting in like back in 2010 is because, we all know the stats. We spend a majority of our waking hours at work, more than actually with our family, all the things that make us say, are we really spending our time wisely? Are we prioritizing for the things that we say that are most important to us, which are the people we love? So then we wanted to flip that and understand, like, how can we actually make those hours more meaningful, so that the things that are most meaningful to us as individuals are actually, being played out in an everyday work environment, no matter what. And so we saw that unfold, which was super cool. Like, you would think, like, it'd be hard to do when you have, factory workers. It'd be hard to do when you have people doing, paycheck to paycheck. But we found, and Javi, I'd love to hear your stories too, but just how people, like, there's a gentleman working a theater in Mexico, and how he so beautifully just talked about how he had found his purpose by working this job because he was serving others, and he found it, like, he loved hearing the stories about what he made them feel. So anyway, that's what kind of put us onto this whole path of work at happiness. And now that we had this really hard time in the last few years, and people really understood, like, wow, things are freaking unpredictable. Like, we never know what's going to happen the next
Yeah.
day. And case told what happened all in 2020. So now we really want to lay a bit of a bigger environment of, look, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there are things that we cannot control, but there are things within us as individuals, as human beings, that we can control, especially in the workplace, to create that environment that we want to be in and that we want to grow in, and actually do the things that are important to us. So that is kind of the trajectory where we want to take beyond happiness in the workplace too. But Hobby, love to hear from you too.
Awesome.
I mean, there is this statement that we've been working on that summarizes a lot of that value proposition that we want for Beyond Happiness, which is to lead, be light. To lead, be light, meaning that everyone in an organization could be leading some aspect in that organization. But to do that fully, and to really see it from the perspective of going beyond, we have to, like, think of ways of offloading those things that create resistance on us. And to do that, you have to become aware of those highs and those lows. That is the first step, so that you can really understand how those lows are creating resistance, or a belief, a limiting belief, or some sort of a drain, right? That is keeping you from expressing fully with full of energy. When you are light, in the sense of lightness, then you are better able to adapt to circumstances and to adjust to the uncertainties, and that creates resilience. But you have to do the work, right? You have to go deep,
Right.
to go light. And if you don't, you lose that opportunity, and you're just taking that baggage with you. And so what we are looking for is taking those teams to do that journey, to explore these ideas, and to make that those realizations actionable and transformative for them. And it's really, it goes beyond the plain idea of happiness, but it's definitely contributing to that sense of happiness that's deeper, more sustainable.
Nice.
Well put. I like how you said you have to go deep to get to the
go
light,
light,
right? So
yeah.
I love that. puts it in perspective. And it couldn't be a better time than now, right? To explore happiness and beyond happiness. We all learned something big, and still are learning from the impact of 2020. And we just found out that the U.S., for example, fell out of the top 20 list of the happiest places in the world to be, which was really distressing news for people like us and yourselves who really are prophets of fun and happiness. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think we can all be a part of it.
So how do we get through it, right? How do we get out of these uncertain times and find a way beyond and forward ultimately? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. How long's the show?
Yeah, I know, for real. Seriously, right? Exactly. Yeah. I need a map.
Talk about a loaded question. Right?
I'll try to do a shorter version, and then I mean, this can go so many directions, but
Right.
in many ways, like what we're doing now is building off what we did in the past. And so in the past, big bulk of our work was instilling purpose and values. And I know these terms are used, they're just kind of everywhere these days, but in some ways they kind of lost their meaning. But when we started talking about purpose and values back in 2010, it was really, that's the key to sustainable happiness. So having a purpose, not just for the company, not just for the team, but having your own individual purpose, and also being able to identify your own values. Like can we cuss on the show? When shit hits the fan, is that all right? When things happen in life.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, sure. I guess.
I guess we could.
Yeah. Okay.
What are the values that you're going to stick to, that you're going to live by? And especially like we're going through here in the U.S., at least, another round with the elections coming up. And that, when you feel those tensions and you feel there's like a lot of the polarity out there, the questions are like, what do you stand by? What do you die? Have you Hamilton fans, like, what would you die for? So that is still very much a big part of what we do. But I think now these days is really about being true and like truly authentic to ourselves in those highs and lows, as Javi put it so beautifully, like go deep to go light, go deep to go high and get, to feel the fun of life and feel the joy of life. And for me, I think the biggest thing that's been different from the work we did in the past is that it's an everyday action, like everyday practice of how to instill these things. Otherwise, we're not really truly living it. Like we cannot honestly say we're living it unless it's an everyday sort of, whatever you want to call it, goal, intention, objective. By the end of the night, if you can look back and say, what, I really tried to do that, then it becomes truly embedded into our lives authentically.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I've always admired about the methodology, and I think you're even kind of taking it again to the next level, is that it starts with me, right? So speak to that a little bit, because I think too often organizations, leaders, they try to go right for the solution, and they're not really looking at individuals. They're looking more, at like a bigger picture of solving a problem, but. Talk a little bit about that, like starting with me.
Yeah. Javi, you want to take that one? Nick, I love how you still remember all our stuff. Like, you're the best ambassador.
I love it.
And
I believe it.
And Nick, that's so timely, because I was just going to say that one of the challenges we have is to really approach the holistic aspect of it, right? And so it's not only about happiness at work, but it's just in general, in all dimensions of life. How are things going for you? There are so many things that you could do at home. And I've seen from the work that we've done recently that a lot of the worry that you have is regarding your relationships at home and how things are going there. And then you carry that at work. When you are at work dealing with, corporate programs to increase happiness, to improve culture, or do values and purpose and all of these, we often don't address the full picture. And because we want to fragment the experience and say, well, your professional life is different from your personal life, but that's actually not the case. So we do have to change that myth and really look at it more holistically. And if there are any efforts that are corporate efforts towards your happiness, they should address the full dimension of yourself, and look at providing tools that will help you also at home, and vice versa, right? If you do something at home that helps you and your family, why don't take that experience back to your team? So it should also be well communicated in that way. And those are the challenges that we have ahead.
Wow.
Well
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
Well
No, I
said.
love that.
And I guess as it relates to work, so the need for a new social contract, between employers and employees. So I found that interesting in the book. But if you could, one of you take that on, that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, so the new social contract came up through knowing that, as we saw things unfold during, through the last several years since 2020, and the bottom line was that the way things were working just weren't working anymore for a lot of people with the Great Resignation, and then we heard like Great XYZ and quiet quitting, and now there's quiet vacationing, and it'll keep on going, right? There's going to be some new TikTok craze
Yeah.
going on, and so I think what that taught us is that, look, leaders and bosses, CEOs, they're people too. They might have a bad rap sometimes, but they're also people. So the way we're trying to reframe it, if it's a social contract, when we come to the table, literally like that beautiful Atlas coffee table you got, and then you have an employee and if you have an employer, if they're looking at it in a way that, look, we're here for a reason, and these two individuals have needs. If I'm an employer and if I'm an employee, how can we meet in the middle and talk about it in a new social contract so that, look, I know, boss, that you have things that are on your list of objectives and goals that I would like to support you in achieving, and vice versa. Like, I have needs. I'm living paycheck by paycheck. How can we make this work? So having it more of like coming to the table as human beings, as we talk about not just happiness but humanity at work. I think that's what kind of clears the way of the grayness. There's so much, there's a lot of charged, emotionally charged, psychologically charged stuff going on right now. But if we make it a
Yeah.
contract, like, hey, I'm here to help you, you're here to help me, let's do this. Well, another way we always say that is, what's in it for me, what's in it for all. And if we look at questions and answer with that intention, then better social contracts can be made, definitely at work, if not in life.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot more talk about mental health these days because of a lot of what we've gone through and how it's kind of been pushed to the forefront and undeniably, become an issue in a lot of our lives. And in the burnout and the quiet, quitting and all these things that are going on are like real issues. And I think if we're able to connect with people as humans, that addresses a lot of those. And obviously we're somewhat simplifying it in that statement, but I believe that there is something inherent in the fact that we all just crave these human connections, that we have purpose and meaning in our lives. And if we can feel that at home and we can feel that at work and we can feel that, amongst ourselves as coworkers and with our relationships with our superiors or bosses, however you want to categorize them, that's only going to help the situation. So it's how do you humanize it and you find real tangible ways to disconnect and understand each other. But being open for those dialogues and those conversations is so important.
Yeah, and I think in all the work that we've done over the years, it's become obvious that, and it's our number one law of fun, if you will, that it's leadership participation, leadership modeling, leadership behavior, and where buy-in, where they're, they are human beings and they're connecting on that level as opposed to, task-oriented things. So super important. And, I'm sure in the work that you do, the success stories are those, the biggest success stories where that leader just fully embraces, that aspect, right?
Yeah.
The human side of work.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually cannot remember a time where we have succeeded without the leadership being totally aligned
Agreed.
and committed.
Yeah.
Same.
And that's just an ingredient that has to be there.
Right.
and they have to be totally invested in this idea conceptually in every way. So that has to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with that, as we roll into, recruiting and retaining top talent, what does the future of work look like? How does this all come together? What does it all shape up to be?
And I'm laughing because Javi just went.
Another loaded question.
Yeah, well, Javi
That's
just went to a conference that speaks to it. But I think there was a lot of forcing functions and silver linings about the last several years, and one of it was like everyone's been talking about the future of work, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's not the future, it's happening right now. It's the present of work because everyone was
Yeah.
forced to go remote. Everyone, like, basically all the things that we talked about was going to happen at least 10 years later. And then all of a sudden we have AI, right? How many times do you want to hear, if we only had $1 every time we heard AI? And so now it's just like boom, boom, boom in our face. So I think it's not about the future anymore. I think it's about it's happening right now. And so for me, I think, and Javi, why I bring you up at the beginning of this answer is because you just went to an AI conference. And so I think this all ties into what you just said earlier, um, which is the humanity part. So the future of work for me is to be more human, knowing that AI will keep on developing and evolving, and it's still so early. Like remember the internet days when it was first born, and it was like this military thing, and everyone said like, "Oh, this is a big next
You
thing."
can send
Yeah,
emails
like
to
what
people.
are you
It's
talking about?
crazy.
Like mind blown. But it took years for corporations to actually understand what that meant beyond the email of us, and I don't know. I was in college, I think. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But in terms of realizing actual value, it took many years. And I think that's going to happen with AI as it still keeps on unfolding exponentially. But that's why I think for us as human beings, as long as we are still human beings, that's why the future of work is human, is to be able to understand that technology will keep evolving. And here we are as stewards, here we are with a sense of integrity, ethics, things that we need to keep on instilling every step of the way. And that's why we talked about purpose and values early on. But unless that keeps on getting built in parallel with all the AI stuff going on, we're going to lose a little bit of sense of why we're here in the first place.
Yeah. And I guess that's really important, to talk about the human aspect. I mean, think about the humans, which most of the humans in our work environments are, the employees. So what is it they really want
right.
ultimately?
I mean, that's a loaded question because in many cases, people haven't had the time or the space to actually go deep into that, and they are just reacting to the
Yeah.
needs in your day to day. And it's impressive to see how difficult it is for someone to answer that question. And I'm going to actually test this with you and to see whether you
Great.
can produce a clear image of the following question. Imagine that a reality TV producer invites you to be the next star of his show, and he's going to be recording a week in your life, any regular week, okay? But you have complete power over how that week is going to go in every way. You just have to describe that to the producer so that he can recreate that reality for you and you can experience it. But first, you have to
Sure.
write it down, and make a detailed description day by day of how you want to experience that week. You cannot believe how many people stump and have a hard time answering that question. And so it's like, look, you're
Yeah.
going to be given all the tools to produce that reality. Forget about feasibility. Forget about
Right.
if it's possible or not. Be a little kid in a candy store or in a toy store. Just imagine, right? And have fun
Right.
with this. Allow it in your life. Very hard. Very hard. Yes.
Wow.
Now, I
I'd like to
invite
take
you
a
to
shot
do.
at it,
Yeah,
actually.
Nick, go for it. I mean, first of all, I would eliminate everything that stresses me out in one way or another, and I would work towards everything I enjoy and I feel passion and purpose towards.
Right.
So I would sort of use that as a little bit of a genesis. But what do you got?
Well, so I mean, a lot of things, going through my mind, and I do fill my days with things that I enjoy and I love, and I have fun, right? So, I'm just at that age of my life where that's just what I'm going to do, right? But so I could, definitely fill in a lot of those blanks. I just started playing drums. I like that. That's kind of fun. I want to do some more of that. And, I want to exercise and I want to be out in the sun. I go to the beach, I'd be with my kids. Like,
Wait,
all
Nick, you go in the sun?
yeah,
I never would have guessed.
Amazingly so, right? So, but that's a great exercise and a real takeaway for the audience to really, we were going to ask that question further in about, what tangible things can people do to, experience or take away some of what we're talking about here today. But that's a really great one. So I'm going to do it.
All right, let's
myself.
go. What's that day look like, Nick?
Yeah,
I mean, you wake up in the morning.
So crazy. It's filled with all kinds of fun stuff.
And there's plenty of bananas and peanut butter.
Bananas and peanut butter are a must. I've not for the last 40 years gone a day without a banana. I will literally go search one out if I can't find it. So anyway, enough about me.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting though. I mean, Javier, when you ask that and you think, I think a lot of people would struggle to even think of like a day in the life, let alone a week, right? To be able to really write out the perfect day is hard.
Yeah.
But then when you think, oh, what would a whole week look like? And then beyond that, right? Continuing to make that not just a day, not just a week, a month, a year, the next decade. And if you craft and really work towards that day, that existence, that lifestyle that you really want to kind of make true. Mm-hmm. And then, but what's great about it, if you do that, and I love this exercise, is then you can reverse engineer it, right? You can start thinking like, how can I make that happen?
Exactly.
What are the things I need to do to make that possible? And you have to start to challenge yourself. Well, I gotta stop doing these things because they're pulling me away from that. And we can make time. I genuinely believe, and I say this a lot, is if you want to make anything happen bad enough, you can most likely do it. Now, time is an issue sometimes, right? We can't guarantee how long it might take. But if you genuinely want to make it happen, you can do it. Mm-hmm. You just have to be committed. You have to want it bad enough. And if you don't make it happen, you have to ask yourself, how bad do I really want it?
Right.
And then maybe just be honest.
Yeah.
That's a question I always ask is, what's irrepressible about you?
Yeah.
What can you not keep yourself from doing? Yeah.
Right.
That's a great question.
It's going to happen no matter what. It doesn't really, situations, circumstances, it's not going to stop you.
Yeah.
What is that? And that it tunes you into your fire. And the thing is, can we then shape that fire in a way that has a structure and is systemic in the way it creates value? And that's, from there we can do all kinds of things. But you pointed to that point of what's keeping you, what is the gap? Those questions are critical, right? To really feel that aspirational week with the things you want.
Yeah. Like my 4-year-old daughter will do whatever she can to ensure that somehow we're going to be outside flipping rocks and looking for bugs. And she will do anything possible. She'll work me, she'll work mom.
Right.
She's
master
committed.
manipulator.
Yeah.
So no, but I think that's really great. Those are smart questions to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we're really genuinely honest, it'll help us.
What's super cool what you just brought up too, Chris, was that the example with your daughter, we kind of laugh about it, but there's a lot of wisdom in there too, because they have no, there's no assumptions, filters. There's no social, implications as to what their actions are, and just remembering where we were maybe when we were back then, or just doing it now with that kind of lens of, beginner's mindset, super curious, like what is it that when Javi's talking about like an aspirational story, one of the helpful things to do and play that out is like, what if I was to shed all the different things that were expected of me from others and within myself? And that it changes already. Like the first week that you drafted off, you ask that question again with that lens, you'll probably change that week. If you were able to truly shed all those things. And that's why it goes back to what you said earlier, Nick, starting with the me. Like when you do that work, and now we say start with a deeper me, go deeper with that me, and you start to kind of uncover all these things that really plant the different seeds of what this week can be, especially without that lens of, social expectations within yourself too.
And Jen, that goes
That's awesome.
towards what you were saying before about authenticity and being true to yourself, which is such a valuable way to really connect to that aspirational story, because you're not living someone else's aspirational story of you. You know,
Yeah.
you're living
Right.
your aspirational
Exactly.
story. So
Yes.
connecting to that truth is such a journey, right? And I think you were speaking
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah. And we're talking about humanity, right?
Yeah.
Bringing it back to that humanity and, getting real with ourselves. And that's a beautiful thing. And kind of finding a way to make a more authentic
Yeah.
environment, whether it's at home or at work. That's so important.
It is, and I think being able to have that discernment is so important. I mean, we have endless options of what we can do with our freaking time. And now, I mean, there's all,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I love the fact that I think because of what happened the last few years, people are really open to new ideas, like because of a lot of
Yeah.
things that we went through. So let's make the most of it. And in the sense of, look, there's always going to be another self-help book. There's always going to be more inspirational quotes. There's always going to be an amazing podcast like this one we're on.
Right.
But like, to what end will we keep on watching, reading, learning all this until we start
Right.
applying it on the
Doing.
day-to-day basis with the practice? And so I think that's the gap
Exactly.
that we're identifying, and it's been cool to see when people start realizing there's a difference between the way it was versus the way it could be, like now with realism.
Great.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah, an interesting lead in, because some of what we're talking about is, self-awareness and people that are in a position, of self-awareness, but there's like an epidemic of loneliness and isolation, right, for a lot of people. The Surgeon General study that came out months ago was
Yeah.
startling, an epidemic of loneliness. So, the question is, how can you create environments where, we can meaningfully connect, with others systematically, kind of across
Right.
the board. So we do this work, on our own, right, individually. But how do you get it to be systemic?
Yeah, I love that.
That's another loaded
Yeah,
question.
Man.
I like
but,
these little softballs,
but
you
if
guys.
anybody can answer it, it's these guys.
Yeah. Well, here you go.
Softballs. I didn't know we had to come in our full gear. Javi, I see your face. Like I can tell you're like, I want to answer this one.
I can
Go for it.
we can certainly talk about that. You noticed that we have talked about at home and at work, but there
Mm-hmm.
is this other element that we have forgotten about, which is the community. And in many cases, modern society
Yes.
has deprived us of a life in community. But a lot of these opportunities to not be lonely are in the community, and how you interact with it,
Hmm.
how you give to the community, how you get from the community. And before, maybe we were better at living in community, but we have probably through the mechanics of modern life, we have lost that connection. And so that means that all our needs to keep us away from loneliness have to come from our relationships at work or what we do at home. And not everyone has the ability to be fulfilled in that sense. So it's not difficult to see how our current situation has evolved. And I think a good part of the solution is in creating spaces where communities can be engaged. And that's something that we want to work on as well, to be
Hmm.
able to embrace that space in a different way. So to me, that's one of the key elements that need to be engaged to really improve on the loneliness epidemic.
Yeah. Yeah,
Great.
just to build on that, I would say the key, if not a little bit buzzy words going around right now, are belonging, creating a sense, an
Hmm.
environment of belonging, and the other is
Yes.
psychological safety. And I think those two are specifically
Hmm.
and particularly hand in hand right now. It's that sense of belonging of, because before it was about connectedness. We talked about that a lot, which is an important form of happiness, sustainable happiness. But
Right.
belonging takes it a step further, I think. in
Sure.
by using a tool like psychological safety, so that everyone has a sense of, at the end of the day, people just want to feel heard and understood. Once those things are violated in some way, then that's when these tensions start developing and walls start building. But if we actually create environments of belonging where we can actually speak freely and not, freely with respect, of course. I'm going into this election mode, so I'm like, freely with respect. um, that's where we can actually create cultures of belonging and true safety, of not feeling I'm going to be reprimanded, or not feeling I'm going to get fired from my statement because it's coming from a good place. I'm living by our values, so on and so forth. So I think, just to build on what Javi said, it's belonging and psychological safety, uh, for those, for those environments, for to build true community with one
Mhm.
another.
Yeah, I mean, we all want to be a part of something, right? We all want to feel like what we do matters. We want to be connected. That's why we're fans of sports teams. That's why we're, we have pride in like our, oh, I'm an alumni of this, university, or even this high school, or, oh, I
Yeah.
went, to this place, and oh, I've also been to that place. So it's these things that connect us and make us feel like we belong and that we can relate. I think is so very inherent. It's a very instinctual, very natural human element.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful segue to purpose. What you just described
Yeah.
is having that higher purpose of feeling that you do belong to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah. That's, I mean, and that's about, we talk about, you talk about the psychology, and you talk about, the things and the psychological safety and why that's more important. Why is it now that is more important than ever? I mean, maybe it's always been important, but why are we focused on it now more so than before?
Many reasons. In part is because we really have to go to bat. I think at this point we all have to put all of that is inside of us in and collaborate in order to achieve the objectives that we have as a team, as an organization, in whatever project that you're doing. Normally, it takes all everyone's input. If you are unable to get to people's ideas and have them be open to contributing those ideas and feeling heard and really building on those ideas, you're going to miss an incredible potential. I don't think we have the luxury anymore, right, to live in a situation like that, where you are with a team that is only going to tell you 20% of what they have inside. So really going to that level is of the essence to be able to sustain our collective efforts.
And I think, also related to that, is that, back to the question of why it's important now, another silver lining, and Gallup just did their global workforce surveys, and it's still the number one, in some ways, an endemic of a different sort, but burnout is still the number one source of, um, yeah, disengagement and just lack of wanting to be around at
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
still. And so, thinking about that, it kind of points to, we have to ask why. And the reason why they're trying to, like, think about the trends, is that because there was such a loss of control, because there was such a loss of, like, hey, I'm not even sure, if, from the virus to your job to employment to economy, etc. I think what it ladders up to is, yes, we have burnout. It's still the number one that's plaguing us, and the question becomes why. And I think what it's pointing to is that when we lose that sense of control, it, as human beings, it kind of instills a sense of fear. So, a fear of, first it was the virus, and then it was like, maybe I'm going to lose my job, or maybe I'm going to lose my loved one.
Right. What's
That
coming next?
fear
Yeah.
Right.
is, I think, as leaders, if we can acknowledge what we can
It's
do
real.
to really provide support, to really provide belonging, is address, there's a fear, and we don't have to say it like all scary, like, but like, there's a fear that of
Yeah.
uncertainty. But
Sure.
how can we create an environment where we're being honest and transparent of those fears, and addressing it in more realistic ways, and know that we're doing it together? I think that's a key for us as leaders, to kind of, like, keep this pushing forward. Like, people are tired of thinking about what happened in the
Right.
past, but there are ways to actually push it to a more optimistic future.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting you say that. Like, there's a huge shift from being fearful of what's next to, as a group and as a team, understanding that, hey, whatever is next,
Yeah, we'll be
we're
okay.
going to get through
Right.
it together,
Right.
and we'll figure it out. But if we can understand that there is that collective and we're not ignoring the fact that, hey, things happen. Next thing's going to come. We're not 100% sure what it is, but you're a part of the solution, and we're excited to get through it together with you. And we feel safer and we feel better because you're here to help make that possible.
Yeah, exactly. I have a slide in my keynotes now. It just has the poop emoji and happens. So that
Yeah,
happens. That's why we
it
have to
sure
think
does.
about beyond happiness, because that happens.
Yeah. And getting more into some of
happens.
your materials. I know you guys talk about the greenhouse model, and we wanted to kind of get into some of what that is. So how does the greenhouse model ultimately help grow teams and business, all while tending
Yeah.
to our own personal greenhouse?
I'll preface it then, Javi. I'd love for you to take it deeper. But like the greenhouse model was developed as I was working on this book, Beyond Happiness, and the realization was that like we had a belief before, which was as leaders, we want to be creating greenhouses for others. So we don't have to be the tallest tree, biggest plant, whatever, but we want to create the conditions for them to grow. And that all made sense. We all loved that concept. But then I think we realized we were missing a big part of the equation, which was we have to nurture ourselves, nurture our own greenhouse as we tend others. And I know it's not new by any means, like the whole oxygen mask coming from the plane. But we forgot, maybe because we couldn't fly for 3 years or something. We forgot about that whole thing. And now is where I think people are very much more open to understand. Look, I do know I'm not going to be able to help someone else if I'm not fueled up enough. If my battery is like constantly on empty and needs to be charged, there's no
Right.
way I'm going to be able to help the people I love. So that's kind of the premise. But Javi, you want to take it to your alchemist
Yeah.
Sure. Well,
levels?
Oh, here's the alchemy we
Yes.
promised. It's
well,
coming out now.
we can speak to it a little bit more, very definitely. We've talked about some of the elements already during this podcast. We talked about one of the elements of the greenhouse already, which is belonging. And then we talked about alignment, meaning alignment in purpose and values, and how that generates these the conditions for a higher sense of belonging. So all these elements, they do work together. But there are two elements that we haven't talked about, which are also very important. There are pillars of this greenhouse model, which is accountability and commitment. Now, to some degree, we talked about commitment when we said, "What's your fire?" Right? What is that is irrepressible in you that you are committed to, not because you have to, but because you want to, which is really a shift, because you could be very professional, follow your role in that company, in the team, and do as you are told, and follow all the methodologies and the systems and procedures. But the thing is, do you want to do that, or you're just doing it because you have to? And so to shift that energy, it really takes that self-awareness, that capacity to communicate and connect what is that you aspire to achieve, and then connect to that commitment from that place of truth, from that place that we were talking about. It's not simple, right? You do have to do the work to connect to it.
Sure.
Now, once that's done, accountability for me is like the byproduct of it, because who is going to doubt you? You are going to be accountable. You are going to take this on. Everyone is going to trust that you are going to be accountable, because all these elements are there together, right? Now, there is a basic thing that we could add to this, which is fundamental, which is vitality. Is your energy, the energy that you have, your just plainly the healthy energy that flows through you. How much are you taking care of yourself to be able to be energetic and use that energy to deploy all these resources, to be able to be empathetic and be and connect and feel the belonging, contribute to the team. I mean, all of this takes energy, right? So we need to address the sources of energy and the drains of your energy. What's draining the energy in your day to day and what's giving it. And become very aware and explicit about it so that you can manage it. And then all these other things are part, for me, of the greenhouse, because it's the organic, you're an organic person that flows with energy. Are you taking care of that energy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to build on that, it's not just physical energy. Obviously, it's the mental energy, spiritual energy. If you're into that kind of thing, but all those energies that make up
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, that's really important. And you guys, there's a lot in the book to discuss. There's a lot of other topics that we want to talk about, but I think we have a couple more quick ones that we'd love to try to squeeze in if we can.
Sure.
In one of which is about this ripple of impact. And you talk a little bit about the double ROI. So if you can kind of jump in and give us a little insight as to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so double ROI. So I think when we first started this adventure, a lot of people, leaders, especially CFOs, gotta love them. Were like, "What's in it for? Like, what's the ROI? Like, what's the return on investment?" And so there was the data that we kept on bringing forth and from our research, but also in the actual things we did with organizations to show that, like, there's a great chart that describes what I'm the point I'm trying to make. Like, in the last 15 years, those companies that double down on their people outperformed the S&P 500. So the companies that are on like Fortune's best places to work, great places to work, sorry, and Glassdoor's top companies, those companies consistently have outperformed even in tough economic times than the S&P 500. So that's where the traditional ROI comes in. But when we look at the second ROI, it's about the ripple of impact. And what Javi and I have found in this work is that what's so cool is that it can do both. So yes, you can, basically when you double down on your people, you will financially gain for your company. We've seen really great examples with Airbnb, with Patagonia, so on and so forth. We also see in those companies that every individual is rippling their own impact. Every individual, by inherently living their purpose, living their values, they're walking on the street, it doesn't matter. They're not at work because they are living out their own impact by rippling it from their individual, from their team, and therefore organization. And those are the companies that you see that are truly living their purpose, truly living their values. And that's how the double ROI came about.
Now, this idea of ROI from an impact perspective is a high vibration idea, granted, and it requires you to ask a few questions. First you have to realize that, as Jen said, every single person has an impact already that is traveling. I mean, that is ripple in space and time. And in 20 years, you're going to get a call about someone that you touched today telling you about what great thing you did, which you forgot already about. That's a ripple of impact for real. Um,
Yeah.
Now, the question is, do you care about that? Yes? And really, I ask the question
Yeah.
because you will be surprised. Some people don't. And, in no judgment on this, right? Some people just act out of passion, and that's fine. And that's fine. And they do create an impact. The question is, do you care about that? When you do care, there is incredible meaning that is derived from that, but because that is when you connect really with the sense of legacy, with the sense of
Right.
what is that you're leaving behind, which is a lot bigger than what you're being given credit for, by the way. So that's the other question I ask. If you care about it, do you care even if you don't get the credit for that impact? Even if you don't ever know about the impact? And that's super important because sometimes we do things and then we get frustrated because we don't see the results. but we have to really know that we are planting the seed every time, especially if we do it from a place that is a loving place, right? So just be
Hmm.
sure that what you're doing is having an impact, especially if you do it from a place of that is heart, from the place of your heart. And that seed will at some point have an impact in the future. Just let it be, and go with that. And if you care about that, then that meaning will provide you with additional reasons to be happy.
I actually love that, and
Yeah.
it kind of plants the seed. Excuse the pun for a sequel to this, because I think like there's so
Yeah.
much stuff that we can, we could talk about, and I love what and truly believe what.
And we barely
what you
cracked
guys
the
do.
door into the
Right,
greenhouse. And
right.
there's so much in there to explore.
Yeah, exactly,
You know, I think-
exactly. So I do have to ask the question just in the interest of time and just to be respectful of your time. So, again, we could talk all day, but if there's something that you'd want to impart
Yeah.
on our audience about either about the book or a takeaway or something that that we didn't cover, if each of you could just take a minute to pick something that you'd like to
Or even a
impart on
challenge
our
for them,
audience.
something
Yeah.
they could take on and do.
There's so many. Javi, I saw your eyebrow. I love that your expressions are so full. Like your eyebrow goes twitchy and things. You gotta get it out there. Gotta get it out there. Where's your
He's got a
fire?
lot of tells. Maybe it wouldn't be as good on the poker table, perhaps.
No,
But
Right,
it's really good
yeah.
I
here.
would be disastrous in poker. Definitely.
Yeah.
Is there anything, Jen, that you want to say first?
Uh, we covered a lot of the biggies for me. Go deep to go light, go deeper. If you're going, you're starting with your me already. A lot of people are, and that's
Mm.
so promising. But go deeper is the challenge, I say. And I mentioned earlier, it's like I'm on a crusade to make practice sexy. Practice can be sexy. For
Yeah.
me, practice was
Awesome.
like, I got to play piano again. Like, I can't stand. But when we find out what practices we actually like and get value of, one person's massage is different from another meditation, from a ultra marathon to a walk in the park. All these things we have the freedom to
Right.
actually test them. So I'm just all about like, well, just try them, and whatever is valuable to your greenhouse, that's how you know you're gonna, what you want to change your days with, and what you want to spend more time doing to nurture other greenhouses too.
I love that.
Search and
Makes
explore,
practice
try,
sexy. Yeah,
practice.
Yeah. Do the work, right?
Yeah,
Do the
just get out
work.
there and do it. Take a
Yeah.
chance. Find it.
And to Jen's point, there is this idea that I have, which is that every person should have an epic project. And epic projects are projects that are transformational for you and for the people that you are helping, and that are really true to you, where you connect to something that is true to you, that really fills you with energy in the morning, that propels you to take action because it matters and is meaningful. And so, what's epic, or the process of doing the epic project, is to connect to that. Yes. And in essence, it's to go deeper, as we said before, in that inquiry. So, to go back to what we said before, this exercise of writing your aspirational story for a week is a good exercise
Yeah.
to do. If you can frame it as I framed it, imagining that you are going to give this to a TV producer to do a reality show about you. Imagine that circumstance. If you pick up the phone and someone in the other line is telling you, look, you have this opportunity, what would that aspirational story be like? What is the epic project that you would do, right? To
Yeah.
fulfill that which is true to you, and just do the exercise and see whether you can flow with it. And if you don't, identify these elements of resistance and see whether they are true. Are these elements of resistance true? Yes, verify that, because they very well are, very likely they are just limiting. And so once you connect to that, and of course, we have a whole program to go through this, but once you connect to that, you could be in a stage where you can start taking action and saying, okay, what is the gap between my life and that aspirational story? And by the way, you know what's funny? In many occasions, there are many aspects of that aspirational life which are already present in your life, but we are not grateful enough to
They're
recognize it.
suppressed, yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is my invitation.
I love that.
That's
well,
brilliant.
we appreciate you sharing that. We would challenge everybody listening or watching to do just that, right? To write that out. Challenge yourself to kind of paint that full picture and imagine what it would be like, and really push yourself to go all the way in. Don't hold back. Don't suppress, yourself. Don't, keep those barriers that you normally would. All bets are off. You have all the resources. You have every opportunity to live the exact way you want to. See what that looks like.
You know
Where the growth happens.
And then work towards trying to make it
exactly.
possible.
You know what the additional step is to share it. Share your aspirational story.
Yeah.
Share it with others.
There's some accountability in that, right?
Yeah.
Once you share it.
Accountability buddies.
Now there's somebody. Yes. Wait. What about that life you wanted to live? You had that friend that's going to help you push towards it. I think that's really wonderful. So whoever that person is in your life that will kind of keep you accountable, share it with them first, and share it with as many people as you're comfortable. Because the more you share it with, the more likely it'll become real.
Yeah. And you'd be
It'll be
surprised
your
how
legacy,
much
right?
they want to help. They want to be there for you.
Yes.
Sometimes we just kind of
Yes.
have a belief that, everyone's too busy, but this could be part of their
Right.
everyday purpose too.
Yeah, as humans, we enjoy helping others. That kind of ticks in our own little DNA side of things too. So, you guys, I appreciate it. And if we could live our own epic journeys, we would have more conversations like this. So we appreciate you guys coming on the podcast, for sharing your insight, your knowledge, and a bit of yourselves, which is really wonderful. And that's just
Thank
awesome
you.
thing.
Thanks for having
Super
me on.
inspirational. We're really honored to have you on. So always great to see you both, and look forward to more conversations ahead. More happiness.
Yes, much more
And
happiness.
and
more
beyond.
fun doesn't hurt either. So
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Let's-
That's right.
let's meet
Fun and
Get it
happiness are
today.
hand in hand. And real quick before we let you go, with the book, obviously people can get that where?
I think there's a little store named Amazon somewhere in the world that
Amazon,
might
good
still
start.
have it.
Yeah,
I'm not
start
sure.
there.
But yeah,
And if people wanted to tune in to you guys and to connect or follow, what's the best way for them to do that?
I have a site called jenlim.com, and then on social media it's at BY by Jenlim. And Javi?
Well, in my case, my website is justaction.com.
Great. And I'm coming to Mallorca, I think.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to take that as an invitation earlier.
I'm
so
writing that
I
into
think-
my epic adventure as
I think
well.
that's how I'm going to
I'm
get
gonna
in
get
touch
an
with Ali.
invite,
Yes.
Totally.
and then we're gonna get our butts over
Yeah,
there, and we're
yeah,
all gonna
yeah.
have some fun
It is
together.
Yes.
an honor to have you.
Yeah, I was kidding
Thank
earlier.
you all. Thank you both.
Javi is the most gracious host, so let's all meet there next time. I'm sure your wife's gonna love it. But
That
Sounds good.
That
Welcoming the
sounds
whole world.
perfect.
We'll have
to
to-
your house.
Oh,
Live from Mallorca.
Yeah, right. That'd be good.
you don't know.
Hey, I'm in. Don't have to tease me with a good time. I love it. That sounds awesome. Well, thanks again for
again.
coming
Love you
on. You guys
guys.
are wonderful.
Thank
Nick, as
you.
always, it's a pleasure. Another great conversation.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you guys.
Take good care.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
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 So, Nick, it was a great conversation, and just amazing when you think how important happiness is, but what we can do about it is, I think, the thing that's really great. What are your takeaways?
Yeah, so they put the framework around it, right? So it's not, happiness isn't this elusive, unicorn pie in the sky thing. There's
Yeah.
a framework, there's a methodology, and that's what I love about Jenn and Javi and what they do. So me, we, community,
Yeah.
and steps and things that you can do to make yourself happier as an
Right.
individual and in your community.
And you mentioned like the unicorns and the rainbows,
Right.
and I think that was really important too. And that's a big part of what beyond happiness
Yes,
is.
yes.
It's not just the highs.
Correct.
It's understanding both sides of it and how we are in control of shaping it.
Right.
And that was one of the things that Javier left us with, that challenge.
I love that
And we want to
challenge.
remind you guys, definitely take advantage of that. Challenge yourself.
Yeah.
Write it out.
Right.
Figure out what that exact perfect week is, not just a day. And if you had no limits, what would that look like? And then share it.
Share it with your family. Share it with a coworker. Just share it. I think it's really super thought provoking, and I can't wait to do it myself.
I was going to say we should do that for each other.
Yes, for sure.
And hold each other accountable.
For sure.
So, Nick, always a pleasure.
Likewise,
Another
my
great
friend.
episode. I'm looking forward to the next one and beyond. Beyond happiness,
beyond fun.
This episode, beyond all the things.
Stay
and as
tuned
always,
for the sequel.
Yeah, right. Like, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff. You guys, we appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Nick, you're the man, the Godfather, everyone.
You're one. Have a great day.
I'm not kissing the ring, but I will tell you to stay awesome, to stay tuned, and cheers to more fun ahead. This is the Fun on Purpose podcast.